bring it to Yerushalayim.
They didn't control Yerushalayim at the time.
That's one good tactical reason. Yerushalayim is not in our hands. We didn't conquer all of the land, and certainly we have not conquered good parts of Yerushalayim.
And did they know to take it to Yerushalayim at that time yet?
So that's the same
Hashem
question
hasn't
here.
told them yet.
This pasuk that you have quoted to you in the book of Dvarim, the book of Dvarim is unique. What is it called? It's called Mishneh Torah, like a repetition of the Torah. It's all a combination of speeches of Moshe Rabbeinu that God said, write it, put it into the Torah, the book of Dvarim, Deuteronomy. This pasuk, you have not yet arrived to the Menucha and to the Nachala. Moshe is saying, at the time that he's saying this, the Jewish people on the other side of the Jordan River, Moshe Rabbeinu was alive? Yes or no? Now, Moshe Rabbeinu was already passed away. We're on the other side of the Jordan River. Which side? We traveled from the east side to the west side. We've set up camp east of the city of Yericho called Gilgal. We've mentioned it in the past. And we've gone on to war missions. Southern Israel, southwest Israel, and northern Israel for a period of 7 years. Now, after those 7 years ended, and we're told already Yehoshua doesn't have any more strength to go out to war, and he's getting older, we're learning about the apportioning of the land. Structure is clear?
Yeah.
And now we said, Yehuda, first of all, 2.5 tribes took their portions on the other side of the Jordan River. Do you remember their names, Ariel, the 2.5 tribes?
Ephraim and Menachem.
Half of Menashe up north,
Reuven,
and then
Gad, and half of
Reuven, and then Gad. They already, agreement was made. That's 2.5 tribes. Now we learned in the former chapters that Yehuda, southern Israel, including the Negev, where we're going to be hiking, plus Yosef, very active, tribe of initiative. And we've learned about Ephraim and Menashe in the last 2 chapters taking their expansive portions. Now there's like a break. I'm going to talk about some sort of laxity that people, the other tribes, how many tribes will be left? 7 tribes will be left lethargically with their lands not yet allocated. And here in the beginning of chapter 18, there is a move. The Jewish people move from Gilgal all the way up to Shiloh. North of Yerushalayim, some 33, 35 kilometers. And we're asking, why? Why are they moving the Oel Moed to there? So we said we put this pasuk on the board. What Moshe Rabbeinu was saying here in Deuteronomy chapter, what is it? Chapter 12. What is that? I'm not going to leave you out. Chapter 12, verse 9. And Moshe Rabbeinu says this pasuk when are we in a state of menucha, rest, on the other side of the Jordan River? Are we in a state of rest? No. Certainly we're not in a state of nachala. We've not reached the menucha, the rest, and we've not reached the inheritance, the nachala.
So question.
One second, sir.
Sorry.
Am Yisrael standing on the Moabite plains when Moshe Rabbeinu was saying this. The conquest of Eretz Yisrael has yet to begin. And now we're putting things together. Only after a greater part of Eretz Yisrael, correct, Moshe? Only after a greater part of Eretz Yisrael is conquered, now does Yehoshua divide to the tribes. What has been arrived to? A menucha. Some sort of political rest has arrived. Some sort of political rest has been obtained. That's considered an achievement. And now the Mishkan is moved from Gilgal, east of Yericho. Note, the central altar for these last 7 years has been in our camp called Gilgal. There we're bringing daily offerings. And now it's moved to Shiloh. We didn't see and God spoke to Yehoshua, move the Mishkan from Gilgal to... We didn't see that. However, we have oral Torah. Right? The pasuk that you have in front of us, Chazal in the oral Torah said the Menucha, the place of rest, is Shiloh. The Nachala, the place of inheritance, is Yerushalayim, where the Holy Temple, the Beit HaMikdash. It could very well be, okay, that even though we don't find a source, a written source, we don't find a prophetic written source here, not in the Chumash and not in Yehoshua, that it has to go to Shiloh. There's no hint to in the scriptures. So it could be that God told Moshe Rabbeinu, because Chazal in the oral Torah you asked about the other week interpreted this pasuk that you have in front of you, that Menucha is Shiloh, a political rest will move the Mishkan to Shiloh, and the ultimate Nachala inheritance will go to Yerushalayim. That's the opening of the chapter. Sir, you wanted to ask a question.
It's not relevant right now. Yeah.
Is it because we explained it?
I can ask it later. Yeah.
Okay.
No, now I want to know. What the
I have a
question
question.
is.
Yes, I'm interested in hearing with Ariel's question.
How long did they stay in
Gilgal.
Gilgal, and then how long in Shiloh?
Said 7 years.
Okay.
I'm going to leave this alone because I have a chart for you. We're going to learn probably in our next year, not now,
Today.
that the place of Ohel Moed, we're going to learn that it'll be in 4 places until it reaches the Beit HaMikdash. Gilgal, it was there for approximately 14 years. 7 years of warring, 7 years of apportioning the land of Israel.
So they
Portioning the land of Israel, Gilgal. At that time, you were allowed in your backyard, when we're parked in Gilgal, to create your own altar and bring volunteer offerings. I repeat, in Gilgal, it's not a permanent place, so to speak. The Mizbeach is there that Moshe built through Bezalel, the architect of the Jewish people. And the Talmud says in Masechet Menachem, you're allowed to build your private altar called a bama, but only bring volunteer offerings. You can't bring a Pesach offering on that.
Right.
You can't bring a tamid, the actual daily offering 3 times a day there. Once we move the Mishkan to Shiloh, and it's there for close to 400 years, what is outlawed? Building your own private altar. The what's happening here, and this is what I want to discuss right now. It says Vayashkinu Sham, and they dwell there. The Oamoy that means
they were when the Jews moved to Shiloh. That's when the volunteer offerings at home were banned.
that's right.
Okay.
Why? The Shechina says in verse 1, Vayashkinu Shechina, the divine presence was there with the Ohel Moed. Where the divine presence is a central place of serving Hashem. We now have a shift in the land of Israel. We have a central place to serve Hashem. The Mishkan is moved to there. And I want to share with you, why is it called a Mishkan? Number 1, it has more than the tabernacle in the altar. Why? Because there were stones. It was a stone structure. That was not the structure of the Mishkan in the wilderness for 40 years. It was built out of wooden walls. But here, the structure will be made out of bayit. It'll be called a bayit. We're going to see later here in not this chapter, next chapter, that the Mishkan is called a bayit. That was not the name for the Mishkan in the wilderness for 40 years. Why? It was made out of wood and its curtains, but now here it's made out of Evan. What is Evan?
Stone.
It's made out of stone. However, it will not have what the Beit HaMikdash will have. It will not have a roof on top of the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKodeshim. It will not have a roof. Okay? What will it have? It'll have curtains. So on the one hand, it's called a bayit. On the other hand, it's something temporary, and that is expressed because it has yeriot called curtains. And therefore, in Sefer Shmuel, where that's the book we learn about the destruction of the Mishkan, who infiltrates into the country and destroys the Mishkan.
Babylonian.
No,
Plishtim?
that's hundreds of years later.
Ah.
We're talking about the first Beit HaMikdash, the Plishtim.
Listman.
The Plishtim come from the southwestern Israel. They come inland towards the Petach Tikva area, further inland, and they go up to the Shiloh Mountains and destroy it. But there, it's called Beit Hashem, the house of God. And there it's also called an ohel, a tent. What's the difference between a bayit and an ohel?
Oh,
The
hell.
bite's a little bit more permanent.
A bayit more permanent, whereas an
The
ohel
is a temple.
is temporary. So on the one hand, it had stones, but on the other hand, it had curtains. So it was a solid building at the base, but above it, it was covered by curtains. Therefore, it still has the name Ohel. When we get to Yerushalayim, the Beit HaMikdash is not going to be called a what? An Ohel. It'll be called a Bayit, right? And on top of the Kodesh HaKodeshim, it'll have a stone roof. That's the introduction until now, yes.
I just checked in Gilgal. Even if you weren't in Cohen, you could build your own mizbeach.
That's what we said. It was a time of heter bamot, permission to build a bama.
Yeah, we
Bama
have like
is the Mishnaic word for mizbeach, a bama, an altar. Also today, modern day Hebrew, it's a stage, something lifted up higher.
Yeah,
a
the
bama.
Bima.
Bima, right, the bima, right, that's where it's taken from. My dear friends, in verses 2, Vayivatru b'vnei Yisrael shelo chalku et nachalatam shiva shvatim. Gentlemen, 7 tribes have yet to be connected and allocated to the land of Israel, to their parts of the tribes. And it seems that they're pretty lax, lazy, not coming forward to have their matters. Yehoshua notices this. Pasuk 3. Vayomer Yehoshua b'nei Yisrael ad ana, until when? Atem mitrapim. Why are you so weak? Levolo reshet ta'aretz, to come and conquer the land that God gave you. In other words, 7 tribes are just hanging out and not what? Coming to Yehoshua and the Kohen Gadol to get their part, what has to be allocated to them. And then they're going to go out and complete military missions. Remember, wars have ended. We fought and conquered most of the land of Israel. Yet we've stated that there are several places unconquered. You stated Yerushalayim. There are places, there are Canaanite enclaves all across the country that are still not conquered. And Yehoshua says, these guys are just hanging around. What's going on? And he asks for representatives from each tribe. And he wants to write down the names of towns that they're going to be getting. And they have to understand what is already conquered, what is not conquered, and go out and do the job. 7, remind ourselves, the 5 that have their Eretz Yisrael lands. What are the 5 that already we said? Yehuda and Yosef, that's 2. Which Yosef includes Ephraim and Menashe. Well, let's say Yehuda, Ephraim, Menashe, that's 3.
Reuven Gad.
Ruvain, Gad, and half of Menashe. And Menashe. So we have about 7 tribes that have yet to get their matters. I want to bring your attention to, please, and notice who comes first when we're drawing lots. Verse 10. Vayashlechem Yoshua goral b'Shilo. A goral, a lot. A lottery is made. When a lottery is made, meaning the Kohen Gadol stands there with his breastplate called the Choshen. And there are like 2 boxes here, names of tribes, regions of lands, and they're coming up like miraculously. All this is commanded to us in the book of Bamidbar and Parshat Pinchas, how the land will be apportioned. On the one hand, it's apportioned to the mass number of each tribe. The larger the tribe is in persons, the larger the land mass will be for the tribe. But it came up miraculously. And here, which tribe is coming up? Interesting. Vayal Goram Matei Bnei Binyamin Lemishpachotam. And now we're learning that their tribal area is between Bnei Yehuda and Bnei Yosef. And now the Tanakh goes on to explain to us all the names of the towns. Let's bring our attention, if you can show the map also on a diagonal, sir. That's good. I want to bring your attention.
Hang on. This?
Yes, to here.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Bring it closer.
Gentlemen, too much. Here is Yehuda, south of Yerushalayim. You see this. Here is Yosef, massive. In the middle is Binyamin, including most parts of Yerushalayim. Is it just a geographical matter here in verse 11 that the borders of Binyamin are between Yehuda, south, and Yosef, north? Or, and by the way, the towns, look at some of the towns that you know. Yericho, you've heard of. Beit El, you've heard of. Beit Choron, you've heard of. Kiryat Yearim is on the corridor to Yerushalayim. And some other towns. Look at this in verse 15. Some of you, have you made it already to the the spring under the Yerushalayim Tel Aviv road? Never? You haven't? So ask Ari to take you Friday afternoon before Shabbat. It's a great spring to go dipping. Here it's listed here in verse 15. Me Naftoach, the waters of Naftoach, what they call Lifta in Hebrew. All these places, we know about them. By the way, underneath the Temple Mount, Gei Beninom, what they call Gehenom, hell, H-E double toothpicks. Look at verse 16, Gei Beninom. And then we're towards your living, Emek Rephaim, the valley of Rephaim. All these, verse 16, these areas are all mentioned here.
So that's part of Yehuda. I mean, part of Binyamin.
It's still part of Binyamin, and Yehuda's at the border of this.
But the city of Jerusalem, that's not in Binyamin, correct?
A lot of it's in Binyamin. We just saw it.
What about the city of David? Is that Binyamin or is
So
that
that'll
Yehuda?
be maybe parts of it. It'll be split between Yehuda and Binyamin.
Okay.
Now, I want to share with you an idea. Why is it so important for us to know that the prophet says that the tribe of Binyamin lies between Yehuda and Yosef? There must be significance that Binyamin is in the middle.
So he's protected.
Binyamin is a link. He's a connecting link. He's a connecting link to the biggest powers and forces of the Jewish people. This idea I learned from one of my rabbis, Rav Kashtiel and Eli. Physically, he's in between Yosef and Yehuda, as we just saw a description here, right? He's the border of Yerushalayim. He's even in southern Yerushalayim underneath the Temple Mount area, the valley of Gei Beninom. He's even north of Machon Meir, just a little north of Machon Meir on the other side of the highway, the waters of Naftoach, Lifta. Who is Binyamin? And why does he become the link between two powerful tribes? This is a major idea I want to share with you.
He never bowed down to Esau.
We'll mention all these points now. Binyamin, as we learned, I think you don't believe that I designed this, that we study about Binyamin just when he's born in this portion of the week.
I think it's just good time.
It's just coincidental, of course, that God allowed us to study this. Binyamin was born in the portion of the week to the mother Rachel, thank you. Right? Rachel is the main house of Yaakov Avinu, correct? He wanted to marry Rachel. And Binyamin is the younger brother of Yosef. On the other hand, not only is Binyamin, the Rachel house, but Binyamin is very connected to Yehuda. When we learn about the division in the book of Kings, you with me? In the book of Kings. And there's a division. And we have the Ephraim kingdom. To whom does Binyamin cling on to? Yehuda. He clings on to Yehuda, where the 10 tribes are together, right? Going north, 10 tribes, the kingdom in the Shomron, Ephraim, while Binyamin is connected to Yerushalayim and Yehuda, the house of David. Is that clear? Okay, let's go. So he, not only is he a link to the two tribes, Yehuda and Yosef, but he's very connected to Yehuda. Do you remember, starting next week, we start learning about the decline between the brothers and who goes down to Egypt eventually, who's sold to go down to Egypt?
Yosef.
Yosef is sold down. Okay. And we learn about the give and take. Yehuda takes responsibility about Yosef on the one hand. Yosef was part of Rachel, the brother of Benjamin. And yet later, Yehuda says, I'm going to give you a guarantee for the freedom of Yosef. For the freedom of Yosef. In other words, Yehuda and Yosef is connected to Benjamin, Rachel's mother. Yehuda is very connected to the house of Yosef and obviously to Benjamin. The special qualities of Benjamin, he's connected to Yosef, we're saying, and he's connected to Yehuda. Which tribe is connected to Benjamin? And we're going down to Egypt, everyone. Because Benjamin, his life is at stake, they think. And all the family rallies together. Do you remember? Okay, as we're going to be reading in 2 weeks. So if he is able to unite all the families, God sees it apparently fit. Geographically, he will be in the center of Israel. Okay, Benjamin lies north of Yerushalayim, in Yerushalayim, connecting link to Yehuda, the connecting link to Yosef. So therefore, the tribe of Benjamin, one of you mentioned, he's the only one. What does it say on his undershirt?
That didn't bow down to Esau.
What does it say on Benjamin's undershirt and underwear? Made in
Israel.
Why is he the only one that's made in Israel?
He was the only one made in Israel.
He was the only one born in Israel, right? Someone who's Eretz Yisraeli, we call him like a Benjamin. He's very Eretz Yisraeli. Benjamin, his inheritance here, Ariel, his inheritance is like expressing the heart. When we're dealing with the areas of Benjamin, we're dealing with the heart, the center of our nation. And you heard central areas, Yericho, you heard about Beit El. These are significant places that are conquered here. For instance, when we thrust into the land at the beginning of the book, Sefer Yehoshua, which city do we meet up with first? Yericho, a city of Binyamin. Okay? And when we are traveling on the highway from Binyamin up the mountains, and as we learned in the book of Yehoshua, the town called Ha'ai, where Avraham Avinu was too, the town called Giv'on, Beit El. We were penetrating all of these areas on the routes of Binyamin. All of these, our initial entrance is the routes of Binyamin. Now, later on, after we're conquering the country, and everyone is going to their tribes, there's one tribe that can consolidate us. There's one tribe that can unite us, and that is Binyamin. He's going to collect us together. Therefore, if you look at his stone on the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, it's a very interesting a collection of many colors. It's called the Yashve stone. Yaspe, what is it called in Latin or English? I don't know what it's called. Yashve. I don't know if that's Jasper or whatever, I'm not sure.
Jasper.
It's Jasper?
Probably.
The name of the
Sounds
stone?
like Jasper.
The what it is? That Yashve stone is interesting.
Spell it in Hebrew?
Yud Shin Pei He. Yud Shin Pei He. That Yashve stone is full of colors.
Yeah, Jasper.
Is it? Thank you. That Yashve stone of Binyamin is full of colors. What is that telling us? That he's like joining all the colors of the Jewish people. A third point regarding the tribe of Binyamin is that most of the Beit HaMikdash in the future will be built in the area of Binyamin. Right now, like Reuven did say correctly, it's in the hands of the Yevusim, the Jebusites. Okay? But most of the Beit HaMikdash area is in the area of Binyamin. And we know Listen to what the Talmud talks about. When Jews would make their pilgrimage 3 times a year to Yerushalayim, okay, we know that Yerushalayim was not divided amongst the Shvatim. It's like, international land for all of the Jewish people. Yerushalayim was not specifically given to a particular tribe.
It's the capital, you can say.
You can say that many things, but the Talmud says Yerushalayim was not allocated to the Shvatim. When Jews would come up, Aliyah L'Regel, the pilgrimage, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, they would go into any house they would choose. Why? Because I know that you're living there, but it really doesn't belong to you. It's like it belongs to all of Klal Yisrael, but it's the region of Binyamin. And people would knock on the door and say, Bakasha, we'd like to stay here now for the 7-day holiday, and so on and so forth. And you, as the resider of the home, you had to be full of manners to allow those to enter in. That's what the Talmud says. Furthermore, it's Binyamin is the atmosphere of Yerushalayim. Okay? Moshe Rabbeinu, in his blessing right before the passing away, his own passing away, when he blesses all the tribes, what does he call Binyamin? Yedid Hashem. At the end of Deuteronomy, if you can turn your Tanachim to Dvarim Lamed Gimel, Deuteronomy 33. Look at the interesting blessing that Moshe Rabbeinu gives the tribe of Binyamin. Okay, and I just found it. Deuteronomy 33. Levinyamin Amar, to Binyamin, Moshe said, Yadid Hashem. This is prophecy. He's called the friend. Yadid is like just more than a chaver. It's even stronger. He's called the chaver of God, the special chaver of God. Now, why is Binyamin called the chaver of God? Because most of the Beit HaMikdash is built in the region of Binyamin. In other words, the Shekhinah is dwelling in Binyamin. That's why Binyamin is called the friend of God. Yedid Hashem. I'm reading the verb. Yishkon Lavetach. He will dwell. Okay? He will dwell on Binyamin with what? He will dwell securely by him. Chofef alav kol hayom. He will hover over him all day long. Uven ktefav shachen. And in between the shoulders he's dwelling, there's a taller mountain to the north, a taller mountain to the south. Binyamin is like in the middle. That's where the Shekhinah is. It's interesting, the word katef, shoulder, it's used here many times as to talk about the side of the border. The side of the border, it's mentioned several times. And then, regarding Binyamin in verse 12, we're talking about the heights of Binyamin next to the Temple Mount. It says the border goes down to Adar and goes down to Beit Koron and goes down to Yericho. So when you're in Binyamin, you're really high up, whether it's geographically or it is spiritually. Binyamin is the center, bringing the togetherness of all the tribes. And now we can learn that the Temple Mount is the highest place of holiness. It's part of Binyamin. And that's where the Beit HaMikdash will be. So it's interesting. If we go back to the beginning of the chapter, and we're learning about a new situation. And the new situation is wars haven't ended, but the wars 7 years have stopped, ended, portioning the land. The Mishkan is brought from Gilgal, east of Jericho, to Shiloh. And this is an interpretation of the oral Torah or a prophecy not written that Moshe Rabbeinu got. And now we have a political rest. We are in a state of minucha. We're in a state of political rest. The Mishkan is brought to Shiloh. It's a semi-permanent structure, you said. The base is stone. The ceiling is not stone. It is curtains. So we're now learning about a new shift in the divine life of the Jewish people, that the Nachalat of Binyamin, which will be later, now it's in Shiloh. But is Shiloh Binyamin? Shiloh is likely to be Ephraim. And it has nothing to do that the leader of the Jewish people, Yehoshua ben Nun, is from the tribe of Ephraim. It's not that, he has what we call in modern day Hebrew protexia. He has protexia. He knows how to move things. It's not something self-interest in Mr. Yehoshua ben Nun. Rather, this has to be a prophecy. So what we've studied today, as we're about to stop now, is a new shift, a new move, a new political rest. Shiloh, for the next 369 years, becomes the central place of serving Hashem. That means the daily korbanot, the ketoret, the meal offerings, the mincha offerings, the service of the Kohen Gadol on the holy day of Yom Kippurim will be in Shiloh. People will leave their homes and travel to Shiloh 3 times a year, Aliyah L'Regel. And all this, again, is either the prophecy that Moshe Rabbeinu received, which is not hinted to here in the text, or he was given to it as the oral Torah interpretation of what you have here in Deuteronomy chapter 12. Nonetheless, at the same time, we learned today that the rest of the tribes who have yet to come forth to draw the lot, to get their portions, their lacks, Yehoshua says, that's enough laziness. We need fighters like Yehuda, like Yosef. And the first lot that is drawn is Binyamin. And we learn about the illustrious cities that they have and how they are the friend of Hashem. And then in our next Shurim, God willing, next week, we'll see the tribes of Shimon and the others and complete the entire picture. So if you can, for next week, read also the end of this chapter, chapter 18, and see chapter 19. In a few weeks, in like a month or two, we'll be finishing the Sefer, God willing, and going to Sefer Shoftim. Have a great day today, gentlemen. We'll continue doing this each day, each Thursday. We'll try to start around 10.